Another day, another cozy hobby enthusiast. Hello. Today I just wanted to run you through everything I've been enjoying lately, especially in light of seasonal depression. Entertainment is how I get through not just the dreary weather, but also just the more monotonous parts of routine. Yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of everything today because I thought it would be fun. Not just books, not just music, but I'm just a hobby enthusiast, as one of my friends reiterated today. So, this is just the celebration and enjoyment of that fact. So, thank you for joining me today. In my stack of everything, I don't have music, but this is my note to remember to include what I've been listening to. Maybe I should just start with that. What have I been listening to? I mainly want to bring up two albums that came out this year that I've already been listening to, one of them more than the other. So, the one I've only heard in its entirety once is Nat and Alex Wolf's new album. And I'm totally drawing a blank on what it's called, if we're being honest. In fact, I don't think I remember the name of the one I listened to a bunch of times. Yeah, so I actually have not listened to Nat and Alex Wolf previously, but Billy posted about them, and it was like halfway through January, and I was sad that like I'd had almost zero new music so far in the year. Um, you'd be surprised, but among all of the artists I regularly follow on Spotify, I always have at least a handful of songs come out every Friday at least. And then one Friday, when I was feeling particularly sad that my artist had not had any new music, Billy posted about Nat and Alex Wolf's album, and I listened to it, and it's indie rock, and it's angsty, and it was perfect for what I was craving. I feel like I haven't had some good indie rock new music in a while, so I definitely want to listen to it more, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of it. And I'm even more sorry that I can't remember the name of Louis' album that just came out, which you're seeing on the screen, and I'm sitting here feeling silly that I've listened to it at least a handful of times and I can't remember what it's called, but I love Louis. I've especially gotten into his music post Liam's passing, because Louis was so close to Liam, but also I've always loved Louis as a person. He's so goofy, but I know that he's been through a lot of grief in his life, and I love how goofy he is in spite of the amount of pain he's been through in my life, because that's similar to my personality. Um, and, that defiance of the world of like, just because I've been through several traumatic or really hard things in life doesn't mean that I have to lose my goofiness. And yeah, I really like that Louis is the same kindred spirit in that way. Um, I think everyone pretty much would say that in One Direction Louis had the weakest vocals, but Louis's solo vocals shine. I really think his delicate voice was made for more alternative rock sounds, and that's what his music is. And I know Lemonade's the lead single. Is that what the album's called? Somehow I feel like that's not the album title. Oh my gosh, Louis. I'm letting Louis down. I'm just gonna say it's seasonal depression. That's my excuse. I love Louis, and then my two favorite interviewers both released interviews with him at the same time, and I was like, this is my moment. Everyone stop and don't talk to me. And I really liked how Louis talked about on Palaces, which is another fantastic track. He finally went for going full pop, which he had been nervous to do before, and it was done so well. I was so proud of him, because he's always been more of an alternative guy and was always like, like pop's fine, but like if it was just up to him, like One Direction was not the type of stylistic production he would have chosen to do. Um, but when, yeah, him trying like his own flair of pop was so good. And he's also very um, full of emotional processing in his first two albums. And so I really like that this album he decided to go very light and fun. And it obviously comes off that way stylistically. A lot of the songs are very upbeat and fast paced. But also that just highlights Louis' upbeat, goofy personality that I love so much. So I don't know what it is. I feel like so many people's third albums, thinking of Harry Styles and Billie Eilish especially, tends to be the one that's the most authentic to themselves. And I think Louis is no exception here. I think his third album is the most him. Um, I love hearing some of his music and immediately associating it to their personality from what I've seen through music interviews. So Billy, Harry, and Louis have all done that. I think Niall did that well too. So I love how by album 3 they've all really found the way to write music that exudes their unique personalities. That's the music that I've been enjoying. Um, Okay, I have a stack of all of my random updates here, and these are in no particular order, but I kind of wanted to vary the media type as we go. So, the next thing I wanted to talk about are the new books that I've gotten since we talked last. And the first one is The Night Circus by Yangsi Shu. And this has been on my TBR for years, so many in fact that I forgot what this even was or where it came from. So when my sweet friend Emma gifted it to me, I was like, this was on my TBR? I don't remember that, which also proves how many books are on my TBR. It says, quick-witted, ambitious Jilin is stuck as an apprentice dressmaker, moonlighting as a dance hall girl to help pay off her mother's mahjong debts. Which that's just kind of funny to me. Love mahjong. But when one of her dance partners accidentally leaves behind a gruesome souvenir, Jilin plunges into a dark adventure. Chinese houseboy Ren also has a secret, a promise he made to find his dead master's severed finger and bury it with his body. Ren has 49 days, or his master's soul will wander forever. As the days tick by, a series of unexplained deaths racks the district, along with whispers about men who turn into tigers. Jilin's and Ren's increasingly dangerous paths crisscross through lush plantations, hospital storage rooms, and ghostly dreamscapes. Dazzling and propulsive, the Night Tiger is the coming of age of a child and a young woman, each searching for their place in a society that would rather they stay invisible. And Yangsi Chu is a Malaysian writer of Chinese descent. So this will be, well, actually, I don't know for sure, depending on my TBR jar, if I will read this year or not. But my May read, What My Bones Know, is also by a Malaysian writer. So in terms of my around the world goal to continue this year, I will definitely hit Malaysia, maybe even twice. Apparently Reese Witherspoon enjoyed this and said, And then the second book that I purchased myself is Bel Canto by Anne Patchett, who I have several books of, or rather whom I have several books of on my TBR, and I've not read any. So this will be my first one. And as you can imagine, why I added this one, it's because I love music. This sounds really curious. It says, Summer in South America, at the home of the country's vice president, a lavish birthday party is being held in honor of the powerful businessman, Mr. Hosokawa. Roxanne Koss, opera's most revered soprano, has mesmerized the international guests with her singing. It's a perfect evening until a band of gun-wielding terrorists takes the entire party hostage. But what begins as a panicked, life-threatening scenario slowly evolves into something quite different. A moment of great beauty as terrorists and hostages form unexpected bonds and people from different continents become compatriots, intimate friends, and lovers. I think I'm also interested sociologically. And I'd be curious if she's just going off her imagination or if she's done any type of sociology. Yeah, I've never read about it, but oh my gosh, look at that. There's a little bookmark in there. Actually, at first I thought someone left this in here. This is definitely from where I got it from. I feel like this is such a bold topic that I'll either be fascinated and entranced, or I'll be really weirded out and maybe even to the point of DNFing. I don't know, we'll see. But I tend to take more risks purchasing when I'm buying it used. So even if I don't like it, I put almost nothing into it, if that makes sense. And the little that I did put into it was supporting a small business. So there you go. So those have both been added to my TBR jar. So the next thing I wanted to discuss was some miscellaneous activities that I've been enjoying. The first of which is a solo adventure book that I got for Christmas. This has been super fun when I just want to do something random, though so far I've not done anything too out of the ordinary as someone who has a lot of hobbies. But I have listened to an audiobook. The original prompt was to do so on an air mattress on the lake. I'm quite confident my air mattress has a leak in it, so I'm not about to do that to myself. But I did just take some time to focus on an audiobook. I learned a random party trick as like a new skill. I also learned a new dance. I do enjoy dancing. I just don't do it regularly, but it is my preferred cardio to running. Dancing is it just gives me so much serotonin. And I really enjoy learning little bits and pieces of shuffle dance whenever I can. So that's what I did for that one. The one I'm currently in the middle of that I never quite finished was I took a photo of 3 animals at a pet store and I'm supposed to write a short story about them. So I still have to write the short story. But I have a little chameleon that has its little horn, so I named it Rhino because I love when animals are named after different animals. And then there was a cute little guinea pig that I named Drowsy because it was sleeping. And then there was also a cute little bird that I named Petite instead of Petite, because I just thought that was a cute little word play. So I still have to write a little story about them, but I've really liked the prompt so far. I'm hoping as I go along, I'm starting with all the free ones as well, because there's also ones that cost money, and I just don't have the means to do that right now. But I'm hoping I'll get to be a little more out of my comfort zone. As I do them, I'm happy that the ones I've started with are all pretty common, so that I can leave the more extraordinary ones for a later time, if that makes sense. I'm excited to do more. There's a lot of different kinds of activities in this book. They're all organized by section. So I've done, including the short story one I'm in the middle of, I have done 3 of the 4 try something new ones. So those seem to be pretty average for someone who does a lot of hobbies, compared to maybe someone else who only has 1 or 2 hobbies. And then I feel like theoretically the mattress one would have been a little more different, but again, was not about to use a problematic air mattress to do that. I'm looking forward to some of the ones that are outside, but those are more so going to be for the warmer months as opposed to right now. So yeah, it's been fun to start these, ease my way in, and I'm sure I'll have better stories to tell as I do more of these. The other random activity is puzzle. I'm not a huge puzzler, honestly, because I tend to not have the most patience for them, just because they get monotonous for me very quickly. But if it's colorful and it's 500 pieces or less, I do have the stamina. So I did receive this as a gift, and it has cats and it has books and it's cozy. So of course it was given to me. I love that there's a ladder for the bookshelf. But yes, I need to really start working on this more because I've only done a little bit, and Nugget loves to attack puzzle pieces, so it's made it a little challenging, but probably more of the incentive I need to complete the puzzle. Next category are movies I've been watching. So 2 2 rewatches recently and then 1 new watch. I'm gonna do the lesser favorite first, and that was Beastly. This has inspired a new entertainment of rewatching young adult things from my own life to critique them via psychoanalysis because they're usually like really out of touch in terms of mental health, especially if they were made over 10 years ago, right? Which for me, growing up, like that was my teenagehood. There was not as much mental health promotion even 10 years ago, let alone prior to that. And so this is very problematic, but entertaining at the same time. Because what do you mean? Like he stalked her and fell in love with her virtually without knowing her at all after stalking her, and then basically not blackmailing, but giving her dad an ultimatum that she basically has to go live with him. And like, I get it because it's based on Beauty and the Beast or whatever, but he stalked her. The Beast did not stalk Belle. So basically, this was Stockholm Syndrome, and it's not hot. It's not hot, but there's the nostalgia factor. So of course, I still enjoyed it for nostalgia's sake. But practically speaking, even the most romantic part of him writing her a letter is based on the fact that he loves her, even though he'd only had like 2 conversations with her by the time he wrote that letter, and had only mainly seen her from afar. So, like, Kyle clearly doesn't love Lindy. He's just like, wow, this is someone who doesn't hate me like my dad, right? That's a low bar. You need to go to therapy. And like, it's funny and still entertaining because I have the nuance of a fully developed prefrontal cortex, but the idea that this is actually marketed for young adults, let alone like I saw it when I was 12 or 13, is like, ooh, that doesn't age well for the intended audience at all because they don't have the worldly awareness of what's healthy and what's not. So, the rewatch, I really, really loved The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Obviously. I loved all the spiritual layers. I loved how cowardly the White Witch presented our spiritual enemy in the Christian faith. It was great. I love how Aslan represents the simultaneous attraction and awe and power of God, and that idea that God is approachable and also untamed and beyond our grasp at the same time. I think Aslan represents that really, really well. And one of the most powerful scenes in this movie for me was Aslan and Edmund going off to talk once they rescued Edmund from his wrongdoing. And Aslan returning Edmund to his family and exhibiting full grace and full forgiveness in wanting everyone to move forward without questioning him anymore. I just thought that was really beautiful, and a reminder that forgiveness is not about, or repentance rather, is not about a necessity of punishment or beating yourself up, but just facing again the direction you're supposed to be going, being reminded of your identity and your purpose behind your identity, and just deciding to switch directions. So I really liked how Aslan exhibited the fruits of the spirit. Lovely. I'm so excited to rewatch the others and see what spiritual stories, allegories I can glean from them, because it's like an offshoot of what I do on my podcast. So I'm really, really enjoying this, and it's giving me more awe for God's character. And then the movie that I just watched a couple days ago, that was for the first time with some friends, was Lost in Translation. This one I heard about in my film class at school. We had to recreate one of the scenes actually, and so I was intrigued by watching the whole thing. There was some nudity that was not comfortable for me, but especially because going into it, like right when it started, one of my friends looked up how old Scarlett Johansson was, and she was 17. So when the first shot is of a butt, I was very concerned that she was only 17, because I was like, oh, is this going to be like the trajectory of the whole movie? But luckily it was not. And so her being 17, I was like, okay, that made me really nervous. Um, ethically. But it didn't get into all of the sexual graphicness I thought it was going to. But I will say, for me personally, with just convictions on intaking sexual explicitness, it was not the most fun experience of like feeling like I had to be on edge the whole time that something was going to happen, when in reality virtually nothing happened, and I wish I'd known that, so I could have not had this like edge of stress the entire time. um but there were a lot of good layers of literally being lost in translation. So basically the movie is these two characters, one of them just got married, and came to Japan because of her husband. This is Scarlett Johansson's character. And then this other man, Bob, played by Bill Murray, which I think is funny because my family loves What About Bob, and he's played multiple Bobs. He came to Japan for his work, which was acting in a commercial. Um, and so he's doing this whole publicity acting stuff while he's there. And then, they're both unhappy in their marriages. So it's like this whole unraveling of stuff. But I ended up feeling middle of the road on it. So I gave it 3 stars. I didn't think it was bad, and I really liked the music. The music was very indie rock, right up my alley. Didn't like the general relational concept at all, especially that large of an age gap. But I did really like that they took the title Lost in Translation and they really put so many layers of that into the movie, not just literally between the Japanese and the Americans, but also like miscommunication, misunderstandings, prejudices, assumptions. Something I noticed that I found interesting throughout the movie is there were certain scenes in Japan where the volume got super, super loud, and it kind of showed like all of this overstimulation that was shrouding the characters, which I just found interesting. And then the kicker is at the very end, the way the movie ends, it leaves the viewers confused. So not only is it all of the in-world miscommunications and things that got lost in translation, but then at the end, you, the viewer, become lost as well. And I thought that was a cool fourth wall break. You actually get to join in on the theme of the entire film. So I thought that was cool, but I thought the general relational concept and dynamic was not cool. The next thing I wanted to discuss is my spiritual readings lately. So I am in 3 Bible studies right now, and then personally reading the Bible. So plenty is going on. Speaking of my Bible studies, though, one woman gave me this cool little Bible pen clip, and well, it's probably not just for a Bible, but I use it for my Bible because that's what I mainly use pens for. with my English Standard Version study Bible. I love all the colors in here. So I'm reading through 3 different books right now. One of my studies is going through the book of Ephesians, which is Paul's letter to Ephesus while he's in prison. And now that I'm officially rereading everything in scripture, I really like meditating on the words specifically and why the words are what they are and what the specific word choices imply to bring even more depth to not just the stories that are going on or whatever idea or theme is going on in any given chapter, but also that the specific words are so important and so significant to God's being. One instance is when it says we're lavished in grace. This idea that God's grace is not just about, oh, I'm gonna just cover you as much as I have to, but he actually gives us an abundance of grace, way more than we actually need, because he's wanting to overflow it and he's going to drown you respectfully. I really like that imagery that he's not just gracious, but he's abundantly gracious. He's more gracious than he even has to be to cover sins. So I just love all those little moments of word choice that, again, the joy of writing for me these days is finding the precision of language. And surely God has the most precise language of all time. So now I'm digging into the actual words that he uses, not just the stories he's telling. And it's been a joy. The other book I'm reading with my other study is the book of John, which is one of the Gospels in the New Testament about Jesus's life. So there's 4 Gospels, there's 4 different accounts of Jesus' life because each Gospel is written for a different type of person / audience. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe someone said John is written for the Gentiles. And yeah, we just read this past week John 4, and that mainly is on Jesus and the woman of Samaria and how Jesus showed himself to a woman of Samaria who previously the Jews did not associate with. Not only that, but she had committed adultery many times. And Jesus was willing to associate himself with her and give grace to her and redeem her. And I love all the ways that Jesus' life proves that not only does he love humanity, all of humanity, but he specifically likes to redeem the kinds of people that humans like to consider powerless or weak or ostracized. Sidebar, that reminds me, something I really liked that we covered at my church this past week was in the book of Acts. Let me find which chapter. I apologize, I'm really struggling to find it, but basically Paul is helped by Aquila and Priscilla, and they host him and care for him during his ministry, and they were immigrants from Italy. I don't know why I can't find what chapter it's at, but I just thought that was timely and cool to show, God loves to associate himself with those that culture looks down on, and obviously with everything with ICE. I just thought that was really cool and timely that God loves the immigrant, and we're all immigrants, right? Also, obviously, as I do all of these things, someone bless you. As I do all of these hobbies, this one joins me. She does not like being left out. This one has FOMO more than I do. And then admittedly, because I'm in so many studies, I haven't been reading this as regularly, but what I have been reading when I can on my own is the book of Mark, another gospel. This one I've read less often, and I don't remember which audience Mark was to. So if you know, feel free to leave it in the comments. But I'm currently on chapter 13, where Jesus will foretell the destruction of the temple, and we'll go through the signs of the end of the age. I'm reading the subheadings: the abomination of desolation, the coming of the Son of Man, the lesson of the fig tree, and no one knows that day or hour, in terms of Jesus' second coming. Yeah, so that's what I'm reading in scripture. And then the other thing that I've read with a friend is a Christian book, Embrace Your Life: How to Find Joy When the Life You Have Is Not the Life You Hoped For, by Elizabeth Woodson, which was given to me by a different friend. And this has been a joy to pray through pain points in my life and continue to surrender to God with whatever his plan versus what I think my plan should be. Because even if I have a plan, it's not necessarily God's plan. It's not necessarily going to be executed if it's not God's will. So this is how you learn not to fight, because you can't win against God. Next, video games. Video games I've been enjoying. There's 2 games that I've enjoyed in the recent months. One of them is Bless You. So the first game I've been enjoying is Life is Strange Before the Storm, which is not officially the second Life is Strange. They might actually just be prequels. Anyway, I've played the original game, Life is Strange, before, so I really enjoyed it. And it's one of those games where it's both a narrative game where you're the protagonist going through the world, but it's also a sort of choose your own adventure. So as you go through, you get to decide what direction you take your character when certain conversations come up. And that can change the character relationships depending on what you choose. And I don't know if it fully changes the plot, but it could at least change like subplots to the plot, if that makes sense. So basically the story is about high schoolers and coming of age. And I want to say the entirety of Life is Strange, has been a handful of years since I played that one, was kind of dystopia, but mainly a mystery. And then this Before the Storm one is more so multiple prequel episodes, getting more backstory on the characters and how they came to be in the original game. So it's just super cozy, super easy. You're not really having to fight anything. It's just more of a game if you love characters and character development and dialogue. And those are some of my favorite parts of books and entertainment as a whole. So it's been a really relaxing game where I can be immersed in a world without having to think very hard. A little more action fantasy game that I've been enjoying, that I mentioned as one of my favorites in my seasonal depression video, is Zelda the Wind Waker. This has always been my favorite game from childhood. And for those of you who don't know, would love to share what this game is about because it's my favorite. It is about Link. And Link grew up on this island, at least in this game. I don't know. I haven't played all the other games, so I don't know if they're all necessarily correlated in terms of geography or if they're all separate. I don't know, actually. Good question. In this game, anyway, he grows up on Outset Island, and one day, this creature, this bird, appears out of the sky and steals his sister and flies away. And that's how the adventure begins. He's like, oh my gosh, I need to go save my sister. So he learns how to use a sword because he's gonna have to go save his sister. And I don't know why. It's just because it's a video game. No one's allowed to go with him. It's just this little boy going. Why are none of the adults going? Because it's a video game and it's about Link. And along the way, he's going to discover the the mysticism of his world and the spirits of his world, because this is obviously fantasy. This is not based in reality. Maybe it'd make more sense if I read the little narrative blurb on the back. I don't know if I did the best job explaining. But the adventure begins because he has to go find and rescue his sister. Legend has it that whenever evil has appeared, a hero named Link has risen to defeat it. That legend continues on the surface of a great and mysterious sea as Link sets off on his most epic and awe-inspiring adventure yet. Aided by a magical conductor's baton, which is the Wind Waker, called the Wind Waker. Dumb. He will face unimaginable monsters, explore puzzling dungeons, and meet a cast of unforgettable characters as he searches for his kidnapped sister. And it's one of those fun games where you can just play through the one main plotline, but then you could also do all the random like side quests if you want to make the game last longer and just be immersed in the world further. So there's like 20 or so islands that you can sail around to. Not all of them are related to the main storyline, but it's fun to just sail around and discover what all the islands are just because. So there's a lot of layers to just enjoying the game, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of sailing involved. There's no like jump cuts to get anywhere, so that does make it more like summery, and that's why I enjoy it in the winter. Though some people might not like that you have to sail everywhere, and that might be annoying for some people. I really like the sailing ambiance to balance all of the moments on the different islands where you're actually like fighting, playing the narrative out. It's a good like in between balance where you're just going for the vibes and the ambiance, and then you're delved back into the story when you reach the island you're supposed to go to. So I think it's a good balance from not just being like oversaturated in action the entire time, but you can have like the calm, chill water time in between the action. So I think the game has a really good pacing, but I know some people might find it slow that they have to sail everywhere. And as you can imagine, a big part of the way that he sails around is through his little musical instrument, and it's music as well. So obviously I like it. And there tends to be a lot of flute involved in Zelda music, and that's what I grew up playing. So overall, there's just a lot of nostalgia in it for me. Even the fact that Link wears all green and basically looks indistinguishable from Peter Pan, which was my favorite story growing up, like there's no way I couldn't like Zelda. Like I had to fall in love with The Legend of Zelda. There was no way I couldn't. So, and then the last thing, the thing you were probably wanting the most. So thank you for listening to all my other ramblings. But what have I been reading? What is the latest? That's not spiritual, but just fiction or nonfiction. It's just been fiction. So far, I will say, I've not touched, a month into the year, I've not touched my around the world goal yet with the 4 books I've read so far, but I have succeeded in all my other goals. I've retained everything from each of these books way more, hopefully not just a recency thing. We'll see by December if I remember these books as well. But I tried to read slower generally, so hopefully retained more. I read 2 4-star and 2 5-star, so my ratings are already higher. I'm sure I'll run into at least 3 stars at some point. Ideally, hopefully no 2 stars or 1 stars, but inevitably when I probably will get a 3-star, I'll be sad because I seldom have high rating streaks like this, so I'm really, really enjoying it. The book I just finished almost made me concerned it was going to be a 3-star, but it picked up at the end. The beginning was an emotional roller coaster, so I was in a little bit of a slump, but it leveled out, so it was fine. What was my other goal? There was one more goal, wasn't there? Retain more, check. Higher ratings, check. And support my mental health. I would say generally I've been in the mood for all of these, with the exception of the beginning of the most recent book. So that's been going well. Nugget sneezed really hard. I thought she was gonna throw up. The first book I continued slash finished this year that I hadn't picked up in like 5 months was, technically the real name of it is S, by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorse, but the fictional slash source material of this book is Ship of Theseus by V.M. Straka. This was what I would consider my tome of the year, and I thought it would take weeks longer than it did. This was so fun. This is for people who love being reminded of how cool reading is, just because reading is cool. The one caution I would give to everyone who would be interested in this book is there are inserts that are part of the story. Therefore, be careful reading it. Preferably read it on a surface instead of holding it like this, because things can fall out and you might not be able to find what page it was on, and it's 450 pages, so that would be a problem. And you might have a plot hole because an insert fell out of the book. Luckily, I only had one thing near the end of the book fall out for me, and it wasn't that big of a deal. But yes, you've been warned. Okay, what is Ship of Theseus slash S about? The source material is about S, this protagonist, going out on the seas, and it's kind of Pirates of the Caribbean-esque, at least in the beginning. And he meets all of these characters. He, forms this little group of people, and they are running from this other group that's after them. And the idea is that as the protagonist in this source material and all of the other characters are allegories for real life characters in the meta narrative. The source material is the Pirates of the Caribbean-esque story, but the real story, in my opinion, is what's going on in the annotations and the margins of the source material. So this book, literally this physical book, is a library book at the college of the two characters who are annotating the book. The two characters who I would say are the protagonists of this book are Jen and Eric. Jen is a senior at her college. She's going to graduate soon, and Eric is a alumna of the college. And so they both check out this book because there's a whole mystery around V.M. Straka. Who is V.M. Straka? What's the story with V.M. Straka? Where is V.M. Straka now? And there's a ton of theories about what authors in the fictional world that Jen and Eric live in, V.M. Straka could be. They're trying to figure out for themselves. So they're both individually trying to figure out this mystery, and they find each other because they both keep checking this book out and start annotating it. And so for like half of the book, Jen and Eric have never met each other in real life, but they've forged a bond through annotating this book and passing it back and forth, which in my opinion is like the OG Love is Blind in a fictional universe. So they forge a bond through a book, which I think is super cool. And so all of the inserts within the book, like this article from a newspaper, for instance, are all things that Eric and Jen are putting in the book to give to each other. So they're either real life things like an article, or they're letters to each other about something that couldn't fit in the margins of the pages. And the source material also has a translator. And the translator, supposedly, which is another part of the mystery Jen and Eric are trying to solve, is sending codes to V.M. Straka via translation, because they've never met in real life either, but have a relationship. So Jen and Eric are trying to decode what the translator is trying to communicate to V.M. Straka. And so you get to try to solve puzzles with them, literally, either through ciphers or through themes within the footnotes per chapter. It varies what sort of code you're trying to crack. So it is an academic mystery but it's also trying to figure out who the characters are representing in the source material, and because of that, who the author is and what happened to the author and what their relationship with the translator was. So there's like several layers of mystery. As you can imagine, this is a very complex reading experience. It's not for the faint of heart. It's for people who love reading, who love the necessity of physical books, because there's really no other way to read this book. It has so many layers. And people who love to think, who love something that's very, very layered. It's not just one story, but it's several stories in one story. And it is very rewarding and fun. You just have to have the brain space to give it a few weeks or a month or more, depending how fast you want to read it, of your time. But it's very rewarding. It's a very rewarding experience. You get attached to Jen and Eric. Yeah, there's really good character development. And for those of you who don't know, the two actual writers, Doug Dorst is an author, and J.J. Abrams is a filmmaker who did Star Trek, among many other things. And so it's a really cool combo of a writer, and you can tell that there's also a filmmaker behind it, because the source material, Ship of Theseus, feels very much like a movie, and a lot of the action and description and the way that it's told. So I really like that idea that two different kinds of artists came together to make something, and it makes for a really cool reading experience. I like how several comments under reviews of this book say it's not just a book, but it's an experience. And I think that probably has the most to do with the fact that this is a product of two different kinds of artists. So it's really, really cool. And, you know, you might not necessarily be able to annotate it because there's already annotations in it, but you could try if you really wanted to. But yeah, if you enjoy academia, if you enjoy learning, if you enjoy reading, and if you enjoy also getting to participate in a mystery in a very active sense, not just passively, then you should pick up Ship of Theseus /S, whichever title you prefer to call it. The second book I read, I gave myself a little reprieve with a completely different ease of reading that required very little mental effort with the second and third books I read this year. So the second book I read was Always Remember, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse, and the Storm, which is the sequel art story. I think it's called Art Story. It's not a graphic novel. It's like a painting with words, if that makes sense. They're all pen plus watercolor. It's really pretty art style. This is the sequel to The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And this one in particular had to do with grief. It had to do with fear. It had a really cute page that involved music. It had to do with the mole being obsessed with cake. It was very wholesome, and I like the way that both of these books address hard topics for kids in a very innocent and wholesome way, but don't shy away from the fact that life can be hard sometimes, and even little kids deserve to know that, for the sake of just preparing that everything's not going to be roses all of the time, but obviously not doing that in like a traumatizing or super explicit way, just via emotions, right? It's a really pretty story. It's a very honest, comforting hug to people of all ages who go through all kinds of trials, and I was very touched by the moments that spoke on friendships, or friendships that have failed or ended. So it can cover a wide variety of topics because it's so broad in nature and ambiguous in the ways that you can interpret the story, and I really appreciate that. And I really liked how cozy it was. So it was a joy. P.S. Ship of Theseus gave 4 stars. Still really enjoyed it. Always Remember, I gave 5 stars. Then I read the other 5-star, which is the graphic novel My Imperfectly Perfect Body by Debbie Tongue. This had everything to do with Debbie's own life, so it was a memoir graphic novel, and it had to do with body image, body dysmorphia, which I've struggled with over my life, eating disorders, um, just generally like your relationship with food and your body. And I thought it was marvelously done. I wish I had it when I was younger. Um, I didn't struggle with body dysmorphia actually until adulthood, with my second puberty, mid-20s, but also that's because of trauma. Long story. Anyway, point being, this was unexpectedly emotional. It was very emotional because it was very cathartic and it was very honest. And I was so impressed that it was not just shedding light on these issues, but through the way that she resolved it, um, you could tell like people fed into her insecurities and into what ended up being her own problem, um, like her mom especially. However, the I was a little worried in the direction that it was going, that it was going to put blame on like one specific person or thing. And I was very pleased and overjoyed that it didn't do that. But rather it said we are all at the mercy of really unrealistic standards. And that's why we all struggle. And I really liked that it brought about unity and reconciliation through the cultural struggle that none of us get to escape, whether it's achievement, whether it's perfectionism, whether it's fear, control, etc., etc. I was really pleased with the takeaways, with the way that the story arced and flowed. And I also thought it was wonderful that it didn't just expose the issues as being issues that people go through, but it also showcased the cognitive behavioral therapy behind how she healed. And I think for young adults who are just getting into coping or are not familiar with therapy strategies, this was a perfect example of what it looks like to work through issues like this. So I was very pleased. I thought it was perfect for the target audience. I love looking at books through how they are working or not working for the target audience specifically. And I've read a few young adults lately, and this was by far like hit the nail on the head for young adults, especially. I was very, very pleased with the way that it springboards people into therapy coping, healthy coping. And it wasn't just like, she's all better now, but it's like, it's forever a journey. And also, there's very practical ways that you can combat the things that you struggle with. And it's not through super unattainable, unrealistic methods, but it's through like very attainable ways that you can change the way that you think about yourself and talk to yourself. And you actually have all the tools within your grasp. You just need to understand what they are and how. So I just thought it was lovely, and it was something I immediately sent to my therapist as well because it was so well done. And then the last book that I just finished yesterday is The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery, which I said was going to be the one book I definitely read in January. This was the one at the beginning, Valancy turning 29. I just turned 29, was feeling very depressed and down about being single and the way that her family talked about her and treated her in light of that, and how she felt about herself in light of that. I know some of those narratives all too well. And so at first I was like, oh no, I think this is going to keep me in a reading slump. Luckily, I was buddy reading with a friend who'd read it before, and she said, at this point, it's going to turn around for the better. So I like had that motivation to like hit the turning point, and then it was like a downward slope from there. Um, Ellen Montgomery has beautiful nature descriptions, and it's not that she didn't in Anne of Green Gables, but that they were even more precise in the Blue Castle. For every single season, there's so much magic and sparkle in each of the 4 seasons, and I thought she captured that perfectly. Valancy was so sassy. I loved seeing her character growth. I loved seeing how she changed her view of herself, because again, kind of similar to My Imperfectly Perfect Body, you know, a lot of your struggles really can pivot upon how you view yourself, and you know, having a healthy perspective on expectations in your life. And I thought she was able to, over time, manage her expectations better to make her life better. And I really liked that. I will say there's certain classical female authors I run into, like Louisa May Alcott and Ellen Montgomery, where it's not that I don't like them, but there tends to be a barrier, like a point for some of these authors, um, where I hit a point where like something about it is like, it's like I hit a wall where like I can't like their work anymore. There's certain, like there's somehow a emotional ceiling to their work. And I was trying to figure out how to describe what it was, and I think I realized it's because there's certain elements of their storytelling, because I do think your enjoyment of a book has everything to do with your enjoyment of an author's voice, where these types of authors get so saccharine that there's something about it like doesn't feel entirely authentic to me. Like, yes, there's like amazing parts of life, and there's very sweet parts of life, and very cozy parts of life, but sometimes some writers like lean into that so heavily that I just like don't even relate to it anymore. It feels a little too utopia at times. And not that like I just really want to be depressed, but I'm like I just really want to be realistic, I think. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, you're like going to this ideal that I just like can't follow you into. I would like to be grounded again. So sometimes it feels like they're like a helium balloon, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to go way up there. I'm fine being a balloon that's just like on the ground. That's probably not even the best analogy. And so I can't see myself ever having a 5-star Ellen Montgomery read, not because she's not a good writer, but just her way of storytelling just feels different than the way that I see the world. And I can see what she sees, but I also think I see other things that she doesn't focus on at all. That, yeah, we're just different. We're different people. I don't need my happiness to outshine reality. Like, I don't need like, when the happiness veers into utopian escapism, that's when I'm like, no thanks. I don't want to escape now. I just wanted the encapsulation of happiness, not for the sake of anything but authenticity in the realism of those moments of your life. So, anyway, that was a long ramble. Going forward into February, I started using this journal I talked about. I am mainly reading 2 books, just like I did last month. I'm like, there's 2 books I'm for sure going to read. I'm just trying to be realistic with how busy I know my month is and not put more than 2, just because that way, if there is more than 2, like, it is what it is. But the 2 I really do want to get to, one of them is Crown of Midnight, which is on my TBR. That's definitely the next one I'm going to pick up. The other one I pulled from my physical TBR, If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. There's a few genres I'm really in the mood for. I think the fantasy will be really good. And then I also was like, anything with body image, self-love, continuation. This, from my understanding, has a lot to do with, it's all about women, for sure. All the main characters are women, but it's also about body image and different things that these women are going through. I want to say via healthcare. Then yeah, I'll definitely get to some sort of poetry this month as well. So I'm looking forward to the various themes that I'm going to be the most in the mood for this month. So definitely lighter, less dense, hopefully less emotional. Um, yeah, so I think that's it. This is definitely way longer of a video than I expected it to be, but thanks for catching up with me. I hope you're also enjoying some good entertainment. Let me know which mode of entertainment you're enjoying the most right now, and what is a story, piece of art, etc., that has really stood out to you lately, and why. I'm so curious what captures other people's attention because it can change based on the season, based on your season of life. There's so many variables that go into why we like what we do when we do, or why we don't when we don't. And yeah, I hope you're staying well. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're taking care of yourself. And I'll talk to you later. Bye, friends.